Who is the deadliest man in history? We all fear death. There is no denying that. Sure, some of us might lie that we do not fear death, and perhaps we can suppress that fear temporarily, but eventually, near the end, you will have a fear of the unknown. Although death can be delayed, the infamous one we are going to have a look at today all worked to hasten it for millions of other people. Albert Einstein allegedly said that he believed human stupidity was infinite, and was not sure about the universe as well. But a more appropriate statement would be that human cruelty is infinite. The dictators and tyrants on this list seem to know no bounds in their cruelty, or even have basic morals for other human beings. So get ready, because we are going to examine the top 5 deadliest leaders in all of history, and uncover which one is responsible for the most deaths in all of history. Note that this list is based purely on the number of people that these people killed, directly or indirectly. We are not examining other aspects of their personality, but simply the circumstances of their atrocities. Coming in at number 5 would be Leopold II of Belgium. Now you might be thinking, how could an old man from a tiny European country do any harm? But he isn't your regular waffle-eating old Belgian. Leopold was the king of Belgium, and also controlled a colony called the Congo Free State in Africa. Now this colony was much bigger than Belgium, about 77 times as large as his home country. Leopold was a scheming old man, and he wanted to create some industry in his colony, which he saw as the path to making Belgium better. However, he went about it in a very cruel manner. He created a rubber industry that mutilated and even killed some of its own native African workers. Missionary John Harris would visit the Congo and admit that, quote, "the abject misery and utter abandon is positively indescribable," end quote. And Leopold had actually vowed to make things better for the natives, which he absolutely backtracked on. And instead of improving Belgium, the man actually enriched himself with the profits. He is estimated to have indirectly caused the deaths of 1 to 15 million Congolese, many of whom died due to the abuses of the government. Accurate records were not kept, so we don't know for sure how many people died, but it is estimated that half of the people in the colony died off. Eventually, the Belgian government took control in 1908 due to the atrocities. Coming in at number 4 will be Adolf Hitler. I know that many of you are thinking, you're like, no way, Hitler is coming in at the top. But in terms of pure death toll, Hitler is actually 4th on this list. That is of course, if you ignore World War II, which resulted in untold millions of deaths and was the deadliest war in history. But we are going to ignore that because it is a war that included many players and nations, not just Hitler. So, we are going to solely focus on his atrocities other than starting World War II. Hitler, of course, was the leader of Nazi Germany for about 12 years, until he committed suicide in 1945. He was an extreme racist against the Slavs, Roma, disabled, homosexual, and most of all Jews. Most people forget that Hitler killed millions of people other than Jews. In his concentration camps that were specifically designed to kill off people for no other reason other than their heritage, millions of people went in, but few ever managed to come out and tell the tale. Hitler called these victims subhuman and executed roughly 19 million people. The exact number is debated, however. The third deadliest leader in the history of the world would be Joseph Stalin, of course. I don't know why, but it seems like the atrocities of Joseph Stalin were often overshadowed by those of Hitler, even though the latter dictator killed less people. And most of Stalin's purges were directed at his own people, which might make them even worse. The death of Vladimir Lenin in 1924 paved the way for Joseph Stalin before causing the deaths of his own people. Stalin embarked on a large project to modernize the Soviet Union and bring it into the modern age, but was too much in too little time. While he essentially dragged Russia into being an industrial powerhouse, food production was dramatically affected, and famine swept the land. Shortly after he came to power, famine killed millions of people, with the one in Ukraine called Holodomor, killing 7 to 10 million people. Stalin also liquidated people called the kulaks in the Ukraine that resisted his plans. After Stalin became paranoid that people were out to kill him, he began mass purges that killed millions of other people in the late 1930s. This is known as the Great Purge or the Great Terror, not to mention the numerous gulags that Stalin used to subdue his opponents. In 1940, Stalin massacred many Polish officers, and the Red Army killed hundreds of thousands of his own men for desertion. Actually, relatively, there weren't too many executions. The most deaths were a result of Stalin's policies of collectivization, gulags, and poor treatment of the German prisoners of war. Although we don't know for sure how many people Stalin actually killed, with estimates from anywhere from 30 to 60 million, common estimates put him at around roughly 20 million people. The second deadliest person to walk the earth is likely Genghis Khan. You knew that the Mongols were on the list, didn't you? Considering the fact that the 20th century was the deadliest in human history, and thus it makes sense that the rest of the leaders on this list are from that century, it may seem surprising to see a 13th century Mongolian leader on this list, but we are talking about the Mongols here, of course. Khan founded the Mongol Empire, the largest continuous land empire in history. Yet you don't build such an empire without killing a few people here and there. His Mongol invasions into vast swaths of Eurasia also had some unpleasant aspects as well. For example, he massacred over 1 million people in 1 hour, although this is probably false. Genghis massacred up to 10 to 15 million people in the Iranian plateau alone. And some estimates say that he took until the 20th century for those areas to recuperate. So how much people did Khan really slaughter? Well, some estimates put him at around 40 million people. Not only is this about double what Stalin could do in the 20th century, about 700 years later, but it was about 10% of the world's population at the time. Can you believe it? Although Khan might have been a genocidal maniac, he also did create a large empire and some advances as well. And he kinda repaid his due, considering that around the world, 16 million men are descended from him. Perhaps in a few hundred years, he will fully repay back every single person he killed. Who knows? And I know you've been waiting for this a long time, but of course, the number one pick is Mao Zedong. When you look at it, it shouldn't come as much of a surprise. Being a megalomaniac and the leader of the world's most populous nation is basically a recipe for genocide. However, it should come as a surprise to you that the Chinese people still adore Mao. I mean, some people see him as a savior of the nation. After winning a civil war in 1949, the communist Mao Zedong killed about 4 to 6 million people. That's a big number. And this was basically the systematic execution at the labor camp. He borrowed from Stalin, I think. The Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution, however, make those puny labor camps pale in comparison. I mean, the Great Leap Forward was a great leap backward, since it tried to force people to industrialize really fast and failed epically. Mao was so crazy that he ordered people to melt down even their farming tools and cooking supplies to make steel in their backyard, literally. As a result, millions of people starved to death. I guess the guy was just trying to catch up to the West, but went about it in the worst way possible. In the 60s, he urged a bunch of young Chinese to sweep away old traditions, which basically caused chaos. Young followers of the Mao killed people and destroyed Chinese historical relics. This resulted in up to 7 million dead people. Although we will never truly know how many people Mao actually killed, the highest estimates go up to 78 million deaths. Yeah, that is something you don't learn in history class. So there you have it. Chairman Mao is the deadliest human ever. Now, before I end up in labor camp and disappear forever, please hit that subscribe button for more of this content. You'll regret it if you don't.